Hi everyone. Today we'll be talking about mental health with Josef and Lazo. Welcome to the flow.
Welcome to Flow. Mental health is a big deal, and these days more than ever, it seems to be affecting everybody in society. So, just to start us off, Xavier, tell us what mental health is.
So, mental health, like any health, is the lack or absence of disease or illness. So, we can't really have health without the disease. So, because there are abnormalities that deviate from the norm of most human beings, the majority would be classed as normal. So the feeling, the consistency, the state of living of majority of the people is considered to be the health, basically. So getting rid of the lack of disease, basically.
Okay, generally speaking, what would be the conditions of someone who doesn't have a healthy state of mind?
Healthy state of mind. That's very
So, sorry, let
like
me reword
yeah.
that. If you have mental health issues, what could be signs?
All right. So you definitely feel like, for example, if you've never had it before, then you definitely feel like something is up. You definitely feel like you haven't experienced this before. Like for example, depression, for example, which is very common. 1 in 4 people experience it in their life, or even more now. The thing is, what you would notice is withdrawal from activities that you used to like. You don't find pleasure in things you used to find pleasure in, maybe the foods or going out or doing things that you used to like, and you no longer like doing it. You'll also find what you call it's harder to do daily activities like get to work or wake up, or you'll feel that it's hard to like hold down a job or do things that you used to enjoy.
Everything starts to feel like a bit of an extra burden. So, if you've have ever been to a counselor, for example, you get a questionnaire before you go in, and it asks you things like, how likely are you to oversleep? How likely are you to get into an argument with somebody? And there's like a little metric scale which they then add up themselves. But this all points to how much you've deviated from your regular everyday trends. Now, you were talking about not being able to keep your job, for example. When you have depression and you're at risk of losing your job, it's not because, well, because you actually have depression. It's because you're less motivated. You might not be getting to work on time. You might be sleeping too much. You might be sleeping too little. So therefore, you're not performing as well. So with depression and anxiety, there are so many symptoms that come along, and most of it, what it does is it directly affects your everyday way of life. You start noticing that your personal relationships with people are becoming affected because you no longer feel like you have the energy for it in a negative way. Like, not that you're tired because you've done too much, but no, I'm done. I don't want this anymore. And it is very vague. Like I just talked about oversleeping and not sleeping, because it depends on the person. But those are just some of the symptoms that can really affect your life and mental health issues.
Definitely the part of not being the norm for you. For example, everyone's different. Some people are like generally, can't hold down a job, right? They like to like keep moving from a job to a job. That's perfectly fine. But if you notice something different within yourself, like for example, you used to love walking your dog, but you can't be asked, like you can't leave your bed, and there's nothing you can do, nothing you can reason with yourself to motivate yourself to leave the bed or leave your room, then that would be classed as depression. However, like we need to look at a more holistic understanding of it. For example, if you migrated to a new place, right? And you were not able to hold down a job because you couldn't speak the language and you can't communicate with people, and you feel a bit out of society, that wouldn't be considered as abnormal, because obviously you are not, that isn't the norm for you to be in that situation, because you're not in your home place. You're not familiar with the place. It's hard for you to get a job when you can't communicate with people, stuff like that.
Right, I understand. So when you're out of your regular everyday scenarios, it's a bit different. You have to learn to adapt. However, if you're an average person, every day was fine for you, and you start to wake up and realize over the last few weeks and a month, you have no motivation, you're not doing your daily chores as you would, that could be a sign of depression or anxiety. Now, if I wanted to ask you, let's talk about it from a sense of gender and age. Who does mental health affect more?
I definitely feel like it affects men more, but hear me out, right? I feel like it affects both genders as much, but I feel like women are better at handling mental health than men are. So the
Okay, why?
prevalence um, or the incidence of mental health may be the same in both genders, but I feel like women get through it faster. They are better at handling it, they're better at dealing with it, they're better at, understanding that there is something that's gone wrong. Whereas men, we like to like push it to the side, or we don't accept it. We don't accept that we can have this. We don't talk to people about this. We're statistically less likely to go to a GP or reach out, and more statistically likely to try to take our life. So, now for men in the UK, I think the largest ratio for death, other than natural death, right, is suicide.
That is very, very sad to hear. And I'm going to touch on your point again about men and women and how to deal with it. I think it's a very societal thing. So, generally speaking, men hang out and they do manly things, right? Sports, watch sports, drink, go to the bar. These are things that are generally considered what men do when they meet each other. Now, women, on the other hand, they will talk to each other more, they will express their problems, and this is actually one of the ways that you can help deal with your own mental health, by expressing yourself, by having someone else to talk to you, which brings understanding. Now, because by default, men don't do this backs up his Xavier's point. Men are more likely to then suffer from it, and then to boil it up until it starts to overrun, and then commit suicide. Now, obviously, it's not as linear in real life, but that is what we're saying. And this is why, in terms of gender, we feel, or the science shows, that men are affected more than women. Now, what about age?
Just before I move on to that point, there's also been trials to show that estradiol, a female hormone that is linked to the menstrual cycle, also helps females. So it's not just they're socially equipped with it, but they're biologically equipped with it as well to deal with it more.
I did not know. That's very interesting.
So age, right? I feel like every age has its own phase. Like, for example, we've all heard of old age, people being lonely and depressed, or people having midlife crises, people who are young trying to find themselves. That's a different crisis. People who are remember back in school, the stress that we used to have, about not doing our homework in time, or someone getting bullied.
It wasn't the same. Definitely wasn't the same.
So then social media and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like every age has its own detriments. What do you think?
Just to touch on that, and to back up your point again, when I was in high school, I remember, I would say that when I was in year 9, roughly, is when Facebook really kicked in. Now, when I was coming out of primary school, we had MySpace and things like that, but it wasn't the same. It wouldn't get a kid from going outside to coming in to stay on the computer.
Yeah. Do you remember the MSN Messenger days?
Yeah, and those annoying things like with MSN that you could send someone a message if they weren't responding, and one of them was that big fist that would knock on your screen. That was so annoying. No wonder I never actually got into it. But Facebook was a bit more addictive, and Facebook really started to kick in for me when I was leaving high school. Finally, I feel like it kicked in year 9, and by year 10, 11, I was on it, but it was not the same. These days, not only is it, in terms of social media, a better app, there's more social media apps, right? We'll talk about social media later. But, and this is the point I actually want to talk about. For me, it kicked in late high school, right? For kids these days, they will be 8, 9, 10. They will be on social media. And that is one of the reasons why, younger people now are feeling a bit more depressed. In terms of your point of age, though, you said, people have a midlife crisis. Some people when they're old and some people when they're young, so all ages have it. I really think that old people and teenagers, that's my opinion, no facts here. Yeah. Old people and teenagers suffer the most. What do you think?
Yeah, no, definitely. Younger and younger people are getting access to social media. We're getting younger and younger women who are insecure with their bodies because of the adverts they see or the social media pictures and stuff. You see, men also, see people. We're looking at people through, we've talked about this again, through a hole in their life that they want to show you. So we're seeing men who are 16, men millionaires and stuff like that. So men also have their own insecurities. And I feel like it's getting to a point where 14, 15, 13-year-olds again, scared about things that, they can't physically achieve until they're in their mid-20s. And same with old age. You know, people are living longer and longer and longer, and you know how our family systems are becoming more, you know, disrupted in terms of like before we used to have like so many connections, but now we physically can't have that many like connections. Like human being can only have like about 150 connections in their life that they can like keep stable to. But like as we grow older, like for example, if you're like 100 and your children are like 60 or 70, then you know, you don't really have much like direct family other than like your grandchildren and stuff, and they'll probably be not, you know, in their midlife.
I just picked up something very interesting from what you said. When talking about old people, you talked about the people around them,
Yeah.
and how it starts to decrease or how everyone starts to get older. So that, for them, the loneliness is what might really hurt them. However, what we just touched on was, for younger people, it's things like social media and not being able to attain these societal goals.
Definitely.
So that just goes to show you how vague and hard it is to understand these issues, because we've given you two different age groups with two main different reasons as to why they become what they're like. Is there anything you want to touch on before we start talking about medication?
There was just a quote, what do you call, I remember reading, and it wasn't from any individual, but it's just like a saying that goes on.
Okay.
It's like when you're in like your 10s and your 20s, you know, think about what people think of you. And when you're in your 30s and your 40s, you stop giving a shit about what people think of you.
Mhm.
And then when you're in your 50s and your 60s, you realize that they were never thinking about you in the first place.
Yeah, you were thinking about yourself. Everyone's favorite conversation is themselves, and that's not to sound, that's not to say that people are vain. That's just natural. That's what we're like. It's biological, and you know, next time, just generally speaking, next time you think I did something embarrassing, I wonder what everyone thinks about it in the room. I promise you, 90% of them, they were too busy thinking about themselves to think about what you did. And that's not a knock on anybody. That's just how most of us are like. Everyone's favorite conversation is themselves.
Exactly. And you can use that to your advantage. Like, people always go into meetings and interviews and stuff and think, you know what is that person thinking about me? But that person is equally as worried or socially scared of what you think of them. So you can use that definitely to, you know, for a power play.
Now, I want to now talk about trying to deal with mental health. And firstly, I think we should briefly touch on medication.
So, some what do you call, mental health conditions are easily treated with, you know, what do you call, medications. So you have some really good therapies now in place, which we've developed over, you know, the whole of the previous century. And for example, lithium and bipolar and propranolol and what do you call, beta blockers for, you know, anxiety, you know, SSRIs and MAOIs for depression, tranquilizers and stuff.
Yeah.
So for some people, that's all they need. It's just what do you call, a medication. It helps them going, you know, and they swear by it. Some people are really scared about taking medication, thinking that that's what's causing their mental health condition, when they're not fully wrong, because medication can have a lot of side effects. But normally they're given to you when the actual advantageous effects of the medication outweigh the side effects.
Yeah, it's definitely not something that a doctor just generally throws onto you.
But you know, the best
contrary
thing,
to popular belief,
the best clinical evidence is found when both therapies and medication are used. So, for example, in depression, right, you would give them the antidepressants, and you'd want them to come to talk therapy and counseling and stuff. And it said that the medication doesn't really help them, you know, detrimentally, but what it does, it motivates them enough to get out of their bed, come to counseling, and actually sort out the root causative agent, because what medicines are treating is the symptom. So the symptoms of depression, the symptoms of anxiety, the symptoms of bipolar, the symptoms of schizophrenia, like hallucinations and all of that kind of stuff. However, what psychology treats is the cause of the symptoms. And we have very few causative treatments. What actually goes back down to the root. Whereas treating the symptoms is very superficial. So we need both things. We need the symptoms to go away so we can come into therapy. And we need the therapy to treat the cause so you don't go into relapse.
Yeah, you're right. It's definitely very intriguing and very challenging to find out what these issues actually are at the root, because correlation is not causation. So when you talk about SSRIs, which are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah, serotonin is a neurotransmitter which by trying to keep it in the synapse, not to go too much into the science, you assume that people can be happier.
Yeah, it's your mood hormone. Like dopamine is your reward hormone.
Yeah, okay. And this is what these SSRIs intend to do by keeping it in there, and it's not taken up by your body, so therefore you can by default feel better. But the problem is, or what's perceived to be the problem, it's not always a bad thing. Okay, before I say anything, I just want to say that it's very hard to find any real science for or against SSRIs, because that's how deep the issue is. Now, by that, I don't mean to say that there's no study out there which doesn't show a correlation or anything positive about SSRIs, but I'm saying that there's no overwhelming evidence, as far as I know. Maybe you know different. There's no overwhelming evidence to say that SSRIs work, nor to say they do not work. So this is why depression can be so hard to deal with, because we don't have any real clear answer. Like, sometimes if you have muscular problems, you can say 100% of the time you go to physiotherapy, slowly you'll get better. But with your mental health, it's very difficult. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. The thing is, the medication is doing what we want it to do, like block the reuptake. But the thing is, we're not actually sure 100% how these illnesses are exactly linked to the physiological state. For example, in certain things we are. For example, Alzheimer's disease. You can only definitively know that it's Alzheimer's after the person has died. Do you get me? Because you can use biomarkers. I mean, you can use like blood tests for certain things, like, you know, the beta amyloid protein or tau proteins and stuff. However, you can't definitively say it's Alzheimer's unless you do what you call postmortem.
Right.
So there's some mental health conditions where, you know, we can just use symptoms as guesswork. And that's the thing, you know, it's a lovely point you touched on, because comorbidity is a huge thing in mental health. So we have so many mental health conditions which overlap. For example, you might have depression, anxiety together, you don't know. For example, you might have bipolar, or for example, a DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, or multiple personality disorder, as it used to be known. And then because you have those conditions, for example, you can imagine someone who's got like split personalities, like they're coming out and going, and, you know, the host is getting really depressed now that this is happening. And, you know, at weird times, other personalities can come out. Do you get me? Which are like completely different human beings. So that can cause depression to happen. So it can lead to, for example, anxiety and depression and bipolar to be all interlinked. So it's really hard sometimes to definitively work out which conditions you have. And maybe mental health condition, it's not just one, and it's multiple. And then when you start treating them, then other things can come around. So it can get quite tricky. And we need a whole holistic approach rather than just a single approach or a single medication which can treat, you know, every mental health condition.
So I want to briefly, great points you made there, touch on things that physically or psychologically lead to things like anxiety and depression. I have some points. I think general problems in life, sometimes they can trigger you. Relationships can trigger you for good or for worse. I think that trauma from childhood can really affect you. What do you think about these things?
Yeah, no, definitely. Everything has their own thing. For example, now we kind of know that DID, like I talked about, is definitively caused by some kind of trauma in the childhood. So these personalities, or alters as they're known, they come around to protect that person from a certain memory. For example, if a certain memory is triggered, that alter that was caused from that memory will come around. Like, for example, if someone was sexually abused as a child, right, then they might have a personality that is caused as a result of that to come out every single time he's reminded of that.
Would you say that is a defense mechanism?
Defense mechanism, exactly. So
Okay.
our bodies make ways of, you know, protecting us from harm and from trauma, and it can do that in various ways. Like, some people can go into you know, completely forgetting the memory, like the brain completely wipes it out.
Yeah, I've dare I say I've experienced that within myself. I forgot the actual scientific term for it.
Displacement, regression.
Yes, that's exactly it. Sometimes something can be so traumatic that you just think about it as you have a filing cabinet and you just take this piece of information right at the back, throw it right to the back. And then other times, like you said, your brain finds a way to deal with it by giving you another perception of life, which could be a completely different personality. I actually think, though, In a crazy way, I think ignorance is bliss. So to get that memory and dash it right to the back is probably better than to create a sort of what do you call it? What do you call it? You're hallucinating, so it's a fake
So
environment.
you feel like basically,
Yeah.
if you don't have that memory there, you don't have to get upset about it. You don't have to what do you call, worry about it or have it always on your mind upsetting you. So your
For
brain
the
just
most
does that
part,
for.
it's not there. However, I think you're more at risk of issues in terms of mental health or when your mind starts to hallucinate and create a different reality because it's now decided, for the most part, that this reality is not safe. This,
So, in your opinion, is it better for a person to deal with that memory than just forget it?
in a way, your brain decides for you, and everyone's different. So what your biological makeup
I mean,
is.
like if someone actually remembered it later on in their life, which can happen.
Okay, so we got to think about it in the sense: are we talking about cause like dealing with it completely, or in your everyday life, what would be better? Because in my opinion, in your everyday life, if you can forget about it, you can move on from it. Like I said, I think ignorance is bliss in a lot of cases. However, if we want to actually deal with the problem, then 100% we got to remember it. We got to talk to people about it. Got to get medication for it, and just hope that over time you can fix that. You
I know.
come to peace with it.
Yeah, I agree with. I partially agree with what you said. I definitely feel like though people should like, and it's not down for everyone to be able to do this, but I feel like we need causative treatments like therapy or going back and like regression and causing childhood things that might have led. For example, simple things like nail biting or something could have been a defense mechanism for certain anxiety that you
All
that
my
you have and
life,
stuff.
I've been biting my nails.
Or like a comforting like gesture that you do basically every single time that you just want to be comforted and you don't want to be thinking about certain things that are making you stressed out and all that kind of stuff.
Let me get it personal just for a second. When I bite my nails, I bite my nails mostly when I'm thinking. So that's been one of the ways that I've been dealing with my overthinking is by making sure that my nails are always neat. And actually, right now, I'm not gonna show anybody my nails as a podcast, but my nails these days are so much more what's that word for it? Cleaner and nicer.
Yeah, you could put nail polish on those, man.
Neater is the word
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say. They're much neater. They're less rigid and all over the place. Cause I don't bite them as much because I've psychologically become aware that the more I think, the more I bite my nails. So that's yeah, definitely.
That's
the more I
crazy.
think, the more I bite my nails. So Lazo 4 or 5 years ago, nails were all over the place. Lazo now, perfect.
So that means like you can distinctively work out that you overstress or overthink much
Yeah.
less now.
Definitely. And you only do that by actually going through it and really psychoanalyzing yourself. And no one can do that better than yourself. I think. Can we slide on to non-medical treatments?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, so let's slide on to non-medical treatments. I believe when you're sat in psychiatry or in counseling, your doctors are not directly trying to fix your problem. They're trying to help you unlock what those problems are. So I believe that when you're sat down and you're telling this person, this professional, about all your problems, that's not the fix. That's just a realization. And that's just a, here's your problem, let's face it, let's talk about it. And those are certain links that you develop sometimes. So you might realize because you're bipolar, by talking about it, you distinctively, what's the word I'm looking for? What's the word I am looking for? Okay, I don't forget about the word. You're laying it down, you're writing it down, and you're saying, this is how I am bipolar, and this is how my body or my brain reacts to it. Over time, of course, there's no quick fix, but I think that's what you actually do when you sat down and talking to somebody.
I feel like cause stuff that have been caused by something, like for example, if your stress, depression, anxiety is directly linked to something, then that is an amazing way. Because the thing is, like for example, neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's and dementia and stuff, you can't do much about it because that is linked to old age and stuff. Like for example, it's not really linked to any kind of trauma,
right?
But definitely with like stress and anxiety, like I feel like that is one of the best ways to deal with it. Because or phobias, for example, like if you have a phobia, you cannot treat it by taking medication.
No,
like how much medication can you take, and what's like you're gonna sedate yourself? What are you gonna do?
Yeah, if you're scared of spiders, there's nothing that can help you.
But
You're
the thing
scared of
is, you
spiders.
have to the exposure, right?
Yeah.
So you have to look at a spider, everyday household spider. You have to see, can it harm me? Can it, the things I'm thinking about it, like, turning into some magical ghost and jumping at me and stuff, like it does in horror films. It's not going to happen. So, you look at it first, you look at pictures, and you try to desensitize yourself to that stimuli. For example, people have anxiety of dogs and stuff, thinking that a dog will just bite them. But not all dogs will bite them.
Of course, yeah. That's a very good example. See, I believe phobias are some of the easier things to deal with when we talk about mental health.
Some, definitely.
In
Yeah.
comparison to actual depression, anxiety, that becomes very hard. Because at the end of the day, an animal, you can learn over time that an animal has some biological need and for certain reasons will act a certain type of way.
Like stress. For example, stress is inherently there for a purpose. Like back in the day when we used to, live in the savannah and there used to be lions and stuff, then we had stress as a way, fight or flight, as a way of running away from that animal,
Staying
getting,
safe.
getting, all the blood out of your stomach into the muscles, increasing your breaths, becoming, heightened so that we can run away from danger or react to it or fight it. And now though, like a tweet or a comment can trigger the same reaction because, social dynamics has developed faster than the human brain could develop. The human brain is still the animal brain, right? But the dynamics have changed completely. So now I'm reacting to the news or to my grades, which is not harming me whatsoever, right? In the same way as if a snake bit me or a lion was after me. How crazy is that?
Yeah, again, it talks about the defense mechanisms. But however, before we actually move on to social media, which is a big part of mental health, I want to talk about, let's talk about self-help. Let's talk about self-help. I mean, we read quite a bit.
Yeah.
What do you think about self-help?
I feel like if in any sector there is, a lot of good, but overwhelming bullshit, it's this sector.
Okay. I'm not going to say I disagree.
I feel like anyone, I feel like I or you can just without any qualification, write a self-help book and be like, we all know the basics. Like we all know what we should be doing with life, but how many of us implement it? Do you get me? It's all good reading that you can change. What is easier to say that, if I law of attraction, if I pray or wish for, I am going to be a millionaire and repeat that, to myself a million times before I sleep, then that's just going to happen one day without me putting any effort in, any work in. Do you get me? How easy is it?
Okay.
From your mind, you can just make things happen.
Not to completely take away from the law of attraction, but I myself, like Huzaifa, I'm not a big fan of it. I believe success is psychological. I think that's fact. I know I can't prove it, but I'm telling you straight up to anyone listening, success is psychological, and I'll explain that to you. By that, what I mean is, when you do something, you must be confident about it. Now, me and you, Huzaifa, this is our podcast number 5. Right from the beginning, we've known that if we don't display ourselves as confident, then we will hinder our actual performance on the podcast. So, what that means is, success is psychological. However, that doesn't mean that if Huzaifa does no prep and comes in today and talks about mental health, that just because he believes he's going to be good at it, that he's going to be good at it. This is where the bullshit comes in with self-help.
So it's twofold, right? There's the confidence, so the mental aspect of it, and there is the taking action part as well, and that's the hard part. Taking action is the hard part.
That's the hard part, and this is my criticism of self-help, which I think you share that. Sometimes what it does is it just takes the easy part, the things that make people feel good, the things that you can put on a paragraph to make people buy your book, and it goes on. The problem is, guys, well, good or bad, depends how you look at it, but whether or not people like it, and some socialists might get triggered, but we live in a capitalist society, okay? And what that means is, whenever something works, whenever we realize that something has a great market value, we're going to implement it. That's why, for example, a lot of everyday cars actually have the same engine. Not every company will have its own engine. They will go and get a standard BMW or Mercedes engine because they realize it works more. And it's the same thing with self-help. What these authors have started to realize is they don't actually have to even write their own work anymore. You know what they do? They go and they reference different parts from different books. They just put it at the back so it's not plagiarism, and then they sell it you on a plate. And then they call it the New York Times #1 bestseller.
Which every book is.
It's rigged. It's rigged. Now, again, you might be thinking, oh, Lazo, as if you guys read a lot. I do, but I listen to people like Robert Greene. I listen to people like Jordan Peterson, who in their speech, I can feel their truth.
Elliot Hustle. Yeah, listen,
Oh my God,
listen.
no.
I'm actually like this is happening the first
No,
time.
not Elliot.
I'm actually gonna get you to talk about your encounter with the king,
Okay. No, do
the
you know what it
absolute
is?
spice man.
Okay, so guys, it's not that deep, but you brought it up, so let's talk about it. So Elliot Hustle is very famous on social media, and is a very intelligent man. Let's be very honest about that. Now, however, Elliot Hustle was a strongman. That's what he trained for. That was his passion.
He was actually really good at it.
And
as
this
well.
is the first time I've badmouthed someone on a podcast, and it's going to be Elliot Hustle.
We love you, Elliot.
I think I don't know. Here's the thing. What happened with Elliot was, as he started to transition away from strongman because he physically couldn't do it anymore through his injuries, he started to go into the realm of self-help and betterment. Now, here's the problem. I think he's exploiting people. So I used to follow Elliot Hustle. He's the example, but a lot of people do this. And one day he started talking about making everybody kings and helping people become successful. And the way he was going to do this was by spending a few hours of you every week talking to you, perhaps, whether or not you through Skype, and set you some goals and tell you to do this, which is a very generic self-help thing. The reason where it got annoying for me was I actually reached out about this just in general. I was like, what is this? I didn't know what it was at first. Firstly, Elliot speaks to you in a very condescending manner by like, you are not a king, let me help you make you a king. That's one of the things he said
He's like,
to me.
only I can make you a king.
Yeah, and like, he's never met me, and I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know he was selling something. I just saw Elliot say like, hey man, if you want to get involved in this project with me, just reply to my DM using the word king. And this is how much he was trying to sell you on the thing. He didn't even tell you at the beginning that this is something that I'm selling you. He just said, there's a project that I'm starting that if you want to get involved in. So of course most of us are going to say, yeah, it's Elliot Hustle, let's get involved. And then next thing you know, he sends you new paragraphs and then YouTube videos, and he's telling you, if you subscribe to this and if you pay this much, I will help you become the king in your life. Which I thought was very condescending, because like I said, the guy doesn't know me. The guy probably will never meet me. And he's already trying to tell me, hey man, you're not good enough, but I will help you become good enough, which is what self-help does. And you got to really be careful out there, because sometimes we feel low. We're very prone to people trying to make us feel good, and we often lose our self-confidence and try to find it within someone else, but that's not how it works. Self-help should be about telling you what your mistakes are, face it, work with it, not I, as the author, will help you get there. No, that's not how it works.
Exactly. Especially like asking you to come to a boot camp to like scream and like beat up your chest, and somehow that will make you a king. Like come on, there's levels to this shit, man. Go on.
Man, Elliot took it too far on
I used to love watching him, and he used to have some really valid points.
when he was a strongman. Elliot took it too far for me at one point when he wrote a whole article, and this, by the way, I have no shame in shaming him for it. He wrote a whole article about how Jordan Peterson was a weak man because he expressed his depression to his family. And I thought that's where you go too far. He found someone famous, he took a dig at them, and he wanted to make you feel like that he had the answers and someone else didn't. First of all, with mental health, I can't actually tell you how to fix it. No one can. It's very difficult. We can just give you advice.
You can't be shitting on a man for opening up. That's the exact same mentality that gets men killed.
That's literally what he did. I read his full article, because what happened was Jordan Peterson's daughter came out to talk about her father's issues, and Elliot Hustle just responded by saying, "This is weak. As a man, you cannot do that." And look, man, it's whatever. Let's stop talking about this guy. Let's talk about self-help again, though. There are some good self-help books out there. Is there anything that you want to suggest?
My favorite self-help author, or really like, I don't really see him as a self-help as much as strategy, because he always talks about action. It's Robert Greene.
Robert Greene,
absolute, the real king.
Yeah, books like Mastery, I believe, are very good. Maybe even 48 Laws of Power, although I don't see why people need to be powerful in their daily life, but it's a brilliant book. I think if you look out there and you expose yourself to, I don't know, X amount of self-help books, let's say 10, you will start to filter out very quickly which is good and which is bad.
Definitely. Some of them are very repetitive. They talk about the same points, But there are some exceptional books as well. Like, for example, you mentioned, Mastery, 48 Laws of Power, 33 Strategies of War. How to win friends and influence people. Stuff like, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
12 Rules for Life.
12 Rules for Life.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Can I just say, guys, and I'm an absolute Jordan Peterson fanboy, and I'm a stan. So if you're one of my friends listening to this, you're like, here, Lazo goes again, talking about Jordan Peterson. But the reason why I admire Jordan Peterson so much is that he knows there isn't just 12 rules for life. He talked about it himself in an interview, and he said, we put 12 in because we didn't want to make the book too big. We wanted to be able to market it to a certain way. The man knows and is very conscious that it's not just 12 rules that fix your life.
But that's how to grab attention, innit?
But also to not overanalyze the book, because they're coming out with part 2. They're going to give you another set of rules. But my point being is that what self-help sometimes does is try to oversimplify life. And this again goes into why I appreciate Jordan Peterson so much, is the man genuinely knows that life is very difficult, and it's not just 12 rules, it's not just a set of habits. You really just got to challenge yourself and face your demons.
Exactly. Like, people just love doing that, like putting numbers into things. Like on websites, it's like 10 ways of like how to get her back, or like 5 ways of like what you call becoming the best version of yourself, or like, do these 2 things and you'll never regret life again.
And most times these things are bullshit. You can already tell they're trying to grip you from a marketing standpoint. But the best people to listen to are the people who are doing things themselves, not the people who are just going around talking to everybody. I mean, people like Jocko, people like Gary Vee, people like Joe Rogan, people like Jordan Peterson. You see that type of advice implemented in their life. And it doesn't have to be famous people. It can be people in your actual life. Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is that if you're listening to this and you're not feeling very good mentally, you might have anxiety, you might have depression, make sure that you take the actual information out there that has substance. Please do not let yourself get sucked into general self-help, which is just trying to exploit you. Don't let anyone take your money.
I often lean towards people who talk about action more, because the thing is, taking action is so important. I feel like you can actually train yourself through action to have good mental health practices. For example, if I always feel like, I'm too lazy to go out with my friends and stuff like that, when I'm available and free and stuff, when I'm not doing anything better, but if I push myself to go out, then I actually have fun, I enjoy myself, and it's kind of a way of training yourself to, be up in social situations, because we need that as human beings. So you can almost train yourself to have good mental health habits. Do you get me? Because it links really well with what we've been saying, because action is very important regardless. Like, for example, if you feel like something is going wrong, you reach out, you go to help. Regardless of how you feel, you go against your whims and desires, because what you can have you become depressed and people taking good care of you, and that can be a positive feedback for you to stay depressed.
Oh, definitely.
Because everything is being looked after, and you're not going to doing anything. You're not taking any action.
You stay pampered.
Exactly.
But that's why, like we keep saying, you got to expose yourself to your issues. Your depression is not directly like a phobia. However, it can sometimes be treated in that sense. So if you're an introverted person who's scared of speaking in front of crowds, we're not going to tell you to start speaking in front of crowds straight away. No. Start with speaking to yourself in the mirror. Start with then by speaking to your friends. Start by then speaking to more friends. Start by then doing a little Instagram live where you're exposed to more people. It's steps. It's just like when you're chopping down a tree with an axe. There is no one single axe that I know of that can just swipe a tree. However, if you keep hitting that tree in the same place, you can eventually make it fall. And that's what you got to listen to. When you're online, this is my last piece of advice about self-help. When you're online and someone is being a bit critical, that's not because they dislike you.
Like 2 years ago, I couldn't speak in front of camera. Like, literally, even when we started recording together, I couldn't, we were having such amazing conversations, but I couldn't speak. I was like, definitely. Do you remember that? I couldn't say a word properly, and it was so awkward, and I felt so hesitant. I felt like everyone was watching me.
Yeah, and here we are, 1 year on. We are ready for everyone to watch us. We will be going onto YouTube. We will be going everywhere. So, and
we're not
honestly,
special.
guys,
we're not. There's nothing we're not superhuman about us.
We're just like you guys, and like I just said, it genuinely took a year. It genuinely took a year, but we took our time. We weren't interested with content. We were interested with quality, and here we are today. So you can do anything you put your mind to.
If you take action now, Like, forget thinking, if you want to go into real estate, forget thinking you're going to be, 50 years old, rich, save up all your life and then do
You
it.
can
No,
do it
start
now.
now. Start now with anything you want to do. If you want to learn something, you want to learn another language, whatever you want to do, right? You start now and you start implementing that in your life.
Okay, let's talk about suicide, and then after that we delve right into social media. So it's a big topic. Tell me about suicide, Zayfa.
Suicide is a very, very difficult thing to deal with because the thing is, suicide is the last resort someone has. So, for example, self-harm and stuff, we can always, relate that back to, for example, some person might feel like, they haven't got, they have something that they can't tell people. So, some people you'll see, scars of self-harm and stuff, where then people will ask them like, yo, what's up, and reach out to them. But suicide is like done in secret. Like, suicide most of the time isn't the same as self-harm. Self-harm, sometimes the person actually wants someone to come reach out for help. But in suicide, they've had enough. Like, they are overwhelmed with life, and sometimes financial reasons, other than that,
Personal reasons, relationship reasons.
anything can drive you to it.
Bullying for young
100%.
people is a big thing.
13 reasons why.
Bullying is, I'm going to make a bit of a blanket statement here. And really just, I don't know, maybe even take some digs at people. But let me put it this way, right? If you have a relationship problem, which means that when you're in a relationship, you have very high levels of chemicals running through your mind, and sometimes it's hard to control yourself. If you have financial problems, if you have work problems, that's a bit more understandable when you then give people a hard time. However, I think people who troll online are basically cyberbullying really just need to be taken off the net. And I'm not someone who wants to wrap everybody in cotton. I often get criticized for calling people sensitive. However, there are limits to everything, and certain things are just not respectful. Now, you might say, well, Lazo, look, when people are lashing out online, it's because they hurt themselves. I just think it's very weak.
Yeah.
I think no child should ever have to commit suicide because they were being bullied.
And people who comment on YouTube are the worst kind of breed. Like, do you get me? What the hell? Like, it literally feels like YouTube comment sections are just negative, like, solely. And every good video will have, like, at least a good, like, 7-8K, like, dislikes.
It's ridiculous, and suicide is no joking matter. And let me put it this way, right? In England, we've had a total of 5,691 suicides in 2019.
Wow.
And that is 321 more than 2018. And men between the age of 45 and 49 are still the highest risk of committing suicide.
That's crazy, man. Like, honestly, like, having suicide high as it's ever been is so dangerous. Like, this is rising. This is something that's not falling. More than people dying from cancer, more people dying from malaria, more than people dying from AIDS, more than people dying from road traffic accidents. People are dying from suicide. That's absolutely crazy.
I want to add something to that. And like I just said, this was 2019. Now, 2020 is not over yet. However, 2020 is when the global pandemic started for most of us. So I will bet my life on the fact that we increased from 2018 to 2019, there were 321 more suicides. It's going to be more than that. From 2019 to 2020, it's going to be more than that. This pandemic has affected a lot of people. And there will be more and more suicides. You got to be nice to people, man. You got to be nice to people. You got to try your best and be respectful and be nice around people. There's a guy that might not have that many friends. Reach out. See what they're like. No one said you have to hang out with them. Just be nicer to people. You have the power to do that now. You can reach out like never before. So please, if you're listening to this, just be nicer to people. That's all I can say. I'm not asking for much.
It's actually like, my favorite YouTuber, he actually once, he's done thousands of videos, but once he said, when I started YouTube, I noticed things about myself which I had never noticed before because of your comments. Like, things people said about his ears and his nose and the way he talked and how, like, low pitches or high pitch his voice was and how excited he used to get. And he's like, I've never known, no one's ever told me this. Like, YouTube is like the most critical thing ever.
It's
people love being nasty, get high on it. Like,
you know why? Because it is directly a reaction, isn't it?
Yeah.
So let me talk about life today for children and 30 years ago, or even actually just when I was growing up. Now, the way you develop habit is often positive reinforcement, and that's the same for people as it is for animals. You know, you remember in psychology Pavlov's dog ringing the bell every time, and that would make the dog salivate. So that's about humans, right? In today's day and age, what is your positive reinforcement? Well, because of social media, which we're like amazingly swiftly moving on to right now, that's a retweet, that's a like, that's a comment. So what that says to you is, growing up 20, 30 years ago, the positive reinforcement was, if you did something right, your parents would say, here's a treat. Actually, you can watch TV for 30 minutes. Oh, you can go out, you're not grounded anymore. Positive reinforcement these days is directly linked to social media. That means kids are growing up and realizing the things that gets the most reaction online is what they should carry forward, and this is what is supposedly making them happy, which goes to your point. When you're nasty online, you get a reaction. And this is why so many people are consistently nasty online, because they find that if they say something like, oh, Huzaifa, amazing picture, a couple of people might respond to it. However, if they say, you know, if they insult you, more people will laugh at it, more people will talk to them about it. And we're just a batch of chemicals at the end of the day. So that positive reinforcement directly affects your behavior. But we need to start teaching ourselves that the way we hold ourselves online isn't just affecting us, but it's affecting everybody else around us.
Yeah. I remember, this like 5-6 years ago now, I used to have like a man bun. So when I used to have long hair...
I need to see the pictures, but I'm not seeing this.
I posted a picture on YouTube, and it got quite a lot of like, retweets and likes and stuff.
You posted it on...
Twitter.
Okay, Twitter.
But guess
Toxic
what?
Place.
But guess what, right? One guy, retweeted it saying, it looks like the shit emoji sideways, which I kind of did. But the thing is, soon as I saw it, and like it went viral.
You got self-conscious.
The thing is, the amount of likes and comments, retweets it got was nothing compared to the the subtweet.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, that person who said that to you has now got some positive reinforcement.
Yeah, exactly.
From that negative comment, and then he's going to go and do it again.
He's a big man now, you get me?
Having said that, I've never seen your hair long. That's probably the reason. Oh, wow. It's actually mad. So with social media, guys, it is starting to become, if not already, the biggest part in a lot of people's lives. And here's the thing, right? Because we live in a society where more and more people are working, people have their parents less around, and they have their social media app less around. And this goes back to children again. If your positive reinforcement as a child at the age of 10 is now becoming a like and a retweet, then what that creates is outrage culture. What that creates is a culture of people who just want a reaction. A culture of people who, when they go home after school, they don't want to go out and play anymore, because the bigger dopamine rush in their mind is when they insult somebody. Yeah. And this is what we've got to really be careful of. Now, that's why so many people want to try and censor social media apps, but I actually don't think it's their responsibility. I really don't. I think we've got to learn to take accountability. If you're spending 5-6 hours on social media every day, perhaps you yourself should take it down to 2 hours, to 1 hour. I was that person. I really was that person. Here's the thing. There are too many apps, and these are just the main ones. Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. That's 4. I used to use all these 4, Huzaifa. Now I only use Instagram predominantly.
No, Lazo, fully, I don't have any evidence to show this. I haven't conducted any studies or anything, but I can definitely say within myself, there's a directly positive correlation between mental well-being and less screen time.
Less screen time, 100%. Twitter is a very toxic environment. And not only that, guys, I'll actually give you some stats. Okay. So let me put it this way, right? Let me see what I've written here. Okay. Sharing real problems. Here we go. Depression and anxiety. So this starts in 2019 to 2015, and let me put it this way. Hospital admissions for non-fatal self-harm in the USA between the ages of 15 to 19 increased 62% from 2009 to 2015. These are hospital admissions for non-fatal self-harm. Okay? And this was for girls aged 15 to 19. It rose by 62%. From preteen age 10 to 14, from 2009 to 2015, it increased by 181%, so practically almost tripled. Okay, so these stats are from 2009 to 2015. Now, bear in mind, social media really kicked in around 2010. I've got another set of stats for you. Suicide rates. I have a lot more stats. I'm not going to get into all of them. I will give you these ones, then we'll move on. However, if you want any of the stats, you can just message me or go onto the comment page. Suicide rates for girls aged 15 to 19, 2009 to 2017 increased by 70%. And for preteens, from the age of 10 to 14 basically, in 2009 to 2017 increased by 151%.
Wow.
No one can hide or lie to you and say that social media is not affecting our mental health.
Yeah, definitely. You know, in research in the future, there will directly be, you know, like for example, you have so many different approaches, like the cognitive approach, the behavioral approach. There'll be like a social media approach to like mental health. Like, do you get me? Like, because technology is that stimulus. It's that thing that's caused you to have, you know, the condition that you have. And it will get bigger and bigger and bigger. Like, for example, you know, we discussed in our previous podcast, you know, how like we thought about the world, you know, where in the future will literally be holograms coming, where we'll be.
Yeah, instead of going to a lecture, you might just get a
so
hologram.
our life will literally be through a chip. Like, do you get me? It will be through, you know, AO signals.
That's 100% true. And to take it further, this pandemic that we're in right now is basically reinforcing that. We are now being forced to be less active with each other in person because humans are a actual threat for you to get disease, whereas your phone is safe and it lets you communicate with them from afar. So our lives are becoming more and more electronic. Our social media is now directly a result of us. We put everything out there. We only put the good sides out there at times. However, we just got to learn. It's not easy, but we have to learn how to use everything within moderation. You'll hear me, if you listen to Flo, you'll hear me say that a lot. Everything within moderation. Doesn't matter what we're talking about. So if you are somebody who finds themselves on social media for too many hours a day for no good reasons, then maybe you should.
Because I do feel like if you're not on social media at all, you're disadvantaged in today's society, 100%.
Yeah.
And if you're on it too much, then you risk, you know, being, you know, taken up by it. So I 100% feel like you have to, and everyone's balance is different. For example, your balance might be half an hour a day. Someone's balance might be 1 hour a day. You just got to know that what works for you and what gets your life going without any disruption.
I'm going to go into it a bit more deeper here. We talked about making you happy, and I talked about how people are in this form of outrage culture, and this is kind of the positive reinforcement we have now. By insulting people online, we seem to get the best reactions. I'll take that a step further and say social media apps are directly finding ways to give you a dopamine rush so you don't go off their app. What companies like Facebook do is they need to make sure that they maximize your time on their social media platform, because the more time you spend on there, the more they get for their ad revenue. Now remember, everything is a business. We can't get away from the fact that we live in a capitalist society, and it's not, and I'll keep saying this, it is not the responsibility of Mark Zuckerberg to make sure that I treat myself and other people well online. What they are trying to do is make sure that you use their product just like anything else. Car manufacturers, they try their best to bring out the best cars with every coming model so that you will buy their car more. Exactly. We do not criticize them, so therefore we should not I don't think we should criticize social media platforms. Now, selling our data north, that's something else to be talked about. But what companies like Facebook have now and other social media apps is they have what they call attention engineers, and they work with people like casino managers who directly understand how to keep people where you want them. So when you're at a casino, they know how to keep you at the table. When you're on Facebook, they know how to keep you logged on. This is becoming a business. It's incredibly lucrative. They know too much about us, but I really think it's down to us to destroy that. Government should put legislation in.
For example, Facebook and Instagram have the endless timeline, so it's not in time order, but you know, you always see something and it keeps loading back and forth.
Yeah.
So when you'll open it, you'll see things from 8 hours ago, so you haven't missed it. If you go down, you know, it'll become more relevant, and then, you know, when you refresh, it'll go back to completely new content. So you always have enough content, and it'll get to a point where literally people's like weeks ago pictures are coming up, but it'll make you like more and more and more. It's endless, basically.
Yeah.
The endless timeline, and also, you know, how pings work and stuff, like Twitter, Facebook will tell you like someone's birthday today, or you know, which is sometimes relevant. But the thing is, it'll always be like, oh, this person shared this. Do you want to see what it's about? And the outrage culture point that you made, it's so true because Facebook's algorithms work in a way of making the most outrageous content come viral. So, like for example, mob lynching and stuff like that in India, like that, those horrible videos became viral because the Facebook algorithm loves that kind of stuff. And that's how organizations can work as well to like radicalize you and stuff like that, because those kinds of, vulgar contents get huge hits on Facebook.
Wait, can I briefly counteract that argument by saying the algorithm, which is basically just a machine, it's AI, the algorithm only picks up and makes popular the things that we watch the most. So is it the algorithm is directly feeding us negative things, or do we as humans have some negative
what
side
I mean, no. Sorry, what I meant is the algorithm is a human thing. Like, it's designed by human beings for more attention. So it's definitely a
So
human
the
thing.
algorithm looks at what you search most, or what gets most of your reaction,
What
and
gets
then
more reaction? Yeah.
takes that information back to the Facebook CEOs, and they're like, well, excellent, this is how we get more money for our ads. By the way, with Facebook, if you're one of the people that are around from the beginning, you can directly see how it evolutionized, because it started with things like a post, drop a comment. Now you can like a comment. Now you can drop a reply to a reply. Now you can put emojis in there all the time.
No, it keeps updating, so there's something new.
Tagging is big. I remember when tagging first came along, it was ridiculous. And whenever you didn't get tagged, you felt left out. So what these social media companies do is directly take your psychological state of mind and use it against you, because they know as humans we like attention. We don't want to feel left out. We are tribalistic. We evolutionized to be within groups. So when your friends drop a picture and you're not tagged in it, you feel left out. So therefore you want to go on Facebook and get another picture and tag more people. And
Definitely.
it's psychologically brilliant if you think about it. I know some of you might dislike me saying that. It is a very smart thing that they're doing, but it is borderline evil. Like you talked about at the beginning of this podcast, how people are self-conscious and you can use that against them. That is what Facebook does. That is what Facebook does. I will still say it's not their responsibility to make us treat each other online better. However, Facebook does directly take advantage of the human mentality.
No, 100%. And that's why it's so popular. Like, for example, we need, especially in this pandemic, we need some, kind of compensation for the face-to-face interactions that we have. So social media is going to act like that for a long time now, especially because this virus goes against the very nature of the human being, which is to, have a good well-being, establish, going outside, having fresh air, talking to other people. We need to talk to people, like every single day. We need to talk to people just to stay sane. And now we're going to have to do that over Zoom. Now we're going to have to do that over, Teams, Skype, all that kind of stuff, FaceTime. So social media is directly a necessity now in life. It's not just what it used to be. Like, some people can just go on it if they want to, if you're either on it or you're not. But now you have to be on it. For example, university, like you can't do university without social media now.
Yeah. Social media is the illusion of truth in many ways. It's a fallacy. People tell you about the good parts of their life. They'll never tell you about their bad parts. However, it's not all doom and gloom. Like I said, social media is a direct reflection of us. And recently in 2020, with everything going on, it has become a more positive place. Positive and negative at the same time, but let me explain. I have never seen in my life more movements through social media than today. People are galvanizing and are raising money for every type of crisis on the planet. Never before have I gone on Instagram and seen so many links to direct charities, to GoFundMe pages. And you know what? That if we're going to criticize social media for everything they do wrong, then we need to also congratulate them for things they do right. Because social media these days is full of pro-life, pro-race, pro-religion, and although a lot of people are negative and they send insults, for the majority, a lot of the people that I know personally, they're constantly spreading awareness, and I think that's a great thing. And that just goes to show you, it's not all doom and gloom with social media. You can get help to someone on the other side of the world by just sitting on your phone, right? So,
which is really good, because
credit
before,
where credit is due, right?
Yeah, because before, when we were young, people just used to put pictures of something on or change a profile picture, and that used to do nothing. But now we actually can help the causes that we like. And also, this, however, directly links to what you call mental health, because the thing is, you can't worry about everything. Like, pick a movement and fight for it. Because the thing is, I can't worry about Hazara genocide and what you call things happening in Afghanistan and save the turtles at the same time. Someone else can worry about save the turtles. Exactly, like exactly what he said. Like,
Yeah.
I can't do every single thing. We don't have the mental capability of worrying about every single genocide and every single.
However, the main thing is you can do something. Sorry to cut you off there.
Of course.
What you can do now for people is much more than what you can do.
Yeah. But let me just
social
finish my
media.
point off. So
Go on,
basically, the thing is now, we can definitely do certain things, but you better do it right. Like, for example, if you're gonna support one cause, then go full out on that cause, or pick a few causes. But the thing is, people who bouncing from one cause to another and not really doing anything effectively, it's just gonna impact your mental health at the end of the day, because we can't, as human beings, fathom and understand and try to perplex about every single issue happening in the world. And that way we won't achieve anything. Like, you have to eat the biggest frog first, as they say. You have to pick the biggest and most passionate cause that you want to fight for, that you think is for the betterment of mankind, and fight for that. However, you can't bounce back here and there and become like those activists on social media who just like think everything is evil, everything is bad, and every single cause is to fight for. Some causes are not to fight for, in my opinion.
Listen, there's two things here. Firstly, social justice warriors, you're not actually getting any justice.
Exactly, that's what I mean, social justice warriors.
I don't like, and I never have liked, I don't think I ever will like social justice warriors. I like people who want to speak to me if they feel like I'm making a mistake and want to understand my viewpoint. Because at the end of the day, no matter how you look at it, no matter how much you think certain people are evil and some people are nice, at the end of the day, we are capable of mistakes. And within it, do you know what social media does? It gives you not only a platform, it gives you a following. So if you're someone who's spreading a certain message that certain people are not happy with, it's not just you, it's the madness of crowds. It's the madness that someone in the other side of the world or down the street from you agrees with you, and you never would have known that if you weren't on social media. We got to learn to talk to each other. We got to learn to understand what our good sides are, what our bad sides are. That's why people who get triggered online over the slightest tweets, who refuse to talk to somebody else, anyone who's labeling anybody as an extremist for no reason other than their tweet, it's madness. It's madness. This woke cancel culture is actually not helping, and I will actually argue and say it is going more towards the detrimental of self-help. You're basically isolating yourself. It's us versus them. It's tribalistic. It's ridiculous. Kevin Hart made a homophobic tweet. I think I talked about this before, and he got taken off the Oscars. That was a lifelong dream of that man's. Why should we do this to people? Why are we ruining people's lives over our opinions? Opinions used to be opinions. Now opinions are being conveyed as facts. And social justice warriors are some of the worst people out there who are trying to enforce this logic. I'm just not with it. I'm really sorry. I'm just not with it. That's all I can say on that, honestly.
No, that's the thing. And when we go into lockdown now, we're gonna really have to try to keep safe mentally. And
yeah,
even going back to your point about all this extortion culture and stuff.
Yeah.
Borat 2 came out, absolutely sliced the presidency, and what you call big people like Mike Pence and stuff. It went after them, and it's gonna have zero
Giuliani
impact.
as well.
Zero impact on the election, because people don't give a shit anymore. People don't not absolutely care about anything like that. People already know that's happening. Like, you see what he tried to do with Borat's daughter in the film.
Yeah, Mike
right?
Pence.
No, not Mike Pence. It was Rudy. No.
Rudy Giuliani.
Yeah, Rudy Giuliani. Yes. And he's still gonna get voted. Do you get me? How mad is that?
The thing is as well, speaking of the election, it is literally today.
Yeah.
It is November 3rd.
Yeah, if you're in America, make sure to go and vote.
Guys, this is going to be a crazy day. I mean, by the time we post this, the election would have finished and we would have had results. But honestly, me, tonight, I'm just going to be listening to Joe Rogan and Alex Jones and watching that live stream. It's a crazy election. I'm not going to give any opinions on it. But definitely take care of your mental health the best you can online, because it can be very detrimental to you. Do you think there's anything that we've missed and not talked on?
No, I think we've give initial reaction to this. We'll definitely be making more of these, and
Yeah.
let us know what you want to hear about. Social media as well, like what aspects of that, what aspects of mental health you want to discuss. Is there something something that you think that we're missing out on, some major points that we're missing out on? Then we'll definitely research about that and give our opinion on it.
Yeah, we already have part 2 planned. We've talked about it. We want your feedback though, because we think, for example, in part 2 we'll talk about more the medication aspect. However, you let us know. Go in the comments. Let us know. Thank you so much for watching, for listening. However it is you got onto our platform, we appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Respect.